Pregnant wife was in labor. Husband was on a yacht with his mistress. Karma has arrived. The pain hit like a freight train at 3:47 a.m. Emily Caroline Parker's eyes snapped open in the suffocating Miami heat. Her hand instinctively reached across the bed for comfort that wasn't there. The sheets were cold, untouched. Noah's side of the bed looked exactly as it had when she'd fallen asleep 12 hours earlier. Pristine, abandoned, mocking. Another contraction seized her belly, and this time, Emily couldn't muffle the gasp that escaped her lips. At 35 weeks pregnant, she knew this wasn't supposed to happen yet. Not now, not alone, Noah. Her voice cracked in the darkness of their suburban Miami bedroom. The ceiling fan whirred overhead, pushing around the same stale air that had been choking her all week. Noah, I need you. Silence. Emily's hazel eyes darted to the nightstand where her phone lay face down. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she reached for it with trembling fingers. No missed calls, no texts, nothing. The house felt like a tomb. Every shadow in the hallway seemed to whisper what she'd been trying to ignore for months. She was alone. She had been alone for longer than she wanted to admit. A tear slipped down her cheek, hot against her clammy skin. She pressed a hand to her belly, trying to calm the small, terrified life growing inside her. But her other hand fisted the sheet so hard, her knuckles whitened. How had she let it come to this? How had she ignored every red flag, every late night, every empty promise that tonight would be different? Another wave of pain crashed through her, stronger this time. Emily doubled over, her dark hair falling like a curtain around her face as she gripped the edge of the mattress. The baby. Lucas was coming, whether she was ready or not. This can't be happening, she whispered to the empty room, her gut intuition screaming what her heart refused to accept. Something was wrong. Something had been wrong for a long time. She scrolled through her phone with shaking hands, calling Noah's number. It went straight to voicemail. His smooth, practiced voice filled the silence. You've reached Noah Parker. I'm currently unavailable, but your call is important to me. Liar. Emily breathed, ending the call before the beep. She tried again. Voicemail. Again. Voicemail. The contractions were coming every 8 minutes now. Each one stealing her breath and forcing her to confront the reality she'd been avoiding. She was going to give birth, and the father of her child, her husband of 7 years, was nowhere to be found. Emily forced herself to stand, her legs wobbling beneath her. The hardwood floor was cold against her bare feet as she made it to the bathroom, catching her reflection in the mirror. She looked exactly like what she was, a 32-year-old woman who had given everything to a man who couldn't even be bothered to answer his phone. Her practical cotton nightgown clung to her swollen belly. No glamour, no Instagram-worthy pregnancy photos. Just a woman in crisis, exactly as she'd always been. Real, unfiltered, inconvenient. The pain hit again, and this time Emily had to grip the bathroom counter to keep from falling. 7 minutes apart now. She opened her rideshare app with trembling fingers, watching the little cars move around the map like fireflies in the dark. The nearest driver was 12 minutes away. Too long. But what choice did she have? As she waited, Emily found herself scrolling through social media, a habit she'd developed during the lonely nights when Noah worked late or claimed to. Her thumb paused on a bright, sunny photo that had been posted just 2 hours ago. The image hit her like a physical blow. Noah's face smiled back at her from the screen, his arm wrapped around a woman with platinum blonde hair and emerald green eyes. Behind them, the Bahamas coastline sparkled in the sunset, and the deck of an expensive yacht stretched out like a promise of everything Emily would never have. The caption read, "Living our best life, yacht life, paradise, blessed beyond measure." The woman in the photo was stunning, the kind of effortless beauty that belonged on magazine covers and in men's fantasies. Her crop top revealed a perfect tan, and her smile was brilliant white against glossy lips. Emily's chest tightened so violently she thought she might vomit right there on the cold tile. She sank to her knees, gripping her phone as if squeezing it hard enough could erase the image burned into her brain. A sob slipped out. Sharp, raw, half pain, half fury. All the nights alone, the excuses, the phone calls unanswered, all of it twisted together until she couldn't tell where her heartbreak ended and her rage began. Emily's phone slipped from her numb fingers, clattering to the bathroom floor. While she was about to give birth to his son, Noah David Parker was posing for selfies with another woman. The notification sound from her rideshare app seemed to come from underwater. Her driver was outside. Emily picked up her phone, her hands no longer shaking. Something had shifted inside her. Something that had nothing to do with the baby fighting to enter the world. The intuition she'd spent years suppressing was finally brutally clear. She grabbed her hospital bag, the one she'd packed alone, hoping Noah would at least pretend to care about the birth of his child, and walked out into the humid Miami night. As the Uber pulled away from the house she'd called home for 7 years, Emily didn't look back. She couldn't, because looking back would mean seeing all the signs she'd ignored. All the nights she'd made excuses for him. All the ways she'd made herself smaller to fit into his world. The driver glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "Hospital, right? You okay back there?" Emily pressed her hand to her belly, feeling Lucas shift and kick, as if he too was ready to leave behind everything they'd known. "I'm about to be," she whispered. But as another contraction seized her, Emily couldn't shake the image of Noah's smile. The same smile she'd fallen in love with 8 years ago, now shared with a stranger on a yacht while his wife labored alone. The city lights blurred past the window, and Emily closed her eyes, letting the pain wash over her. She had no idea that this night would be the beginning of everything, that the abandonment she felt crushing her chest would become the foundation of her strength, that the man who had failed her so completely would soon face consequences he never saw coming. All she knew was that she was alone, in pain, and about to become a mother. But she wasn't ready to give up yet. The automatic doors of Mercy General Hospital slid open with a mechanical whisper, and Emily stumbled into the fluorescent-lit chaos of the emergency entrance. The antiseptic smell hit her immediately. Clean, cold, nothing like the warm lavender candles she'd imagined lighting during her planned home birth. "Help!" she gasped to the first nurse she saw, a middle-aged black woman with kind eyes and purple scrubs. "I'm in labor. 35 weeks. The nurse's expression shifted instantly from routine to urgent. "Wheelchair now," she called to someone behind the desk. "What's your name, honey?" "Emily Parker." The words came out between pants as another contraction built like a wave. "My husband, he's not here. He doesn't know I'm—" "We'll worry about that later," the nurse said firmly, helping Emily into the wheelchair. Her name tag read, Denise. "Right now, we focus on you and this baby." As they rushed through the corridors, Emily's phone buzzed against her palm. For a split second, hope fluttered in her chest. Maybe Noah had seen her missed calls. Maybe he was racing back from wherever he was, but it was just a notification. Another like on that yacht photo. The labor and delivery room was nothing like the peaceful space she'd envisioned. Harsh lights, beeping machines, sterile walls that reflected her pain back at her. Denise helped her into a hospital gown, and Emily caught a glimpse of herself in the mirror. Pale, exhausted, utterly alone. "Is there anyone we can call?" Dr. Patel asked as he examined Emily. The doctor was younger than she'd expected, with steady hands and a no-nonsense manner that was somehow comforting. Emily's throat closed. "My husband is traveling for work." The lie tasted bitter. "I have my Aunt Mary Parker, but she lives in Coral Springs about an hour away." "We'll call her," Denise said, already reaching for Emily's phone. "What's her number?" As the contractions intensified, Emily found herself gripping the bed rails and thinking about the birth plan she'd spent months perfecting. Noah was supposed to hold her hand. He was supposed to cut the cord. He was supposed to be the first person to hold their son after her. Instead, she was surrounded by strangers who showed her more care in 20 minutes than her husband had in months. "Emily." Mary's voice came through the phone speaker, groggy with sleep and concern. "What's wrong?" "It's 4 in the morning. I'm in labor." Emily sobbed, the words finally breaking free. "At Mercy General, Noah's not here, and I don't know where he is, and I'm scared." The silence on the other end lasted exactly 3 seconds. Then Mary's voice came back, sharp and decisive. "I'm on my way. Don't you dare have that baby without me." The line went dead, and Emily almost smiled despite everything. If there was one person in the world who would drive through the night to be with her, it was Mary. 2 hours later, as Emily battled through the most intense pain of her life, she heard familiar footsteps in the hallway. Mary burst through the door like a small tornado, her gray hair wild from sleep, wearing an old Miami Hurricanes sweatshirt and sneakers without socks. "Where is he?" were the first words out of her mouth. And Emily didn't need to ask who she meant. "I don't know," Emily whispered, tears streaming down her face. "He's in the Bahamas with someone else." Mary's weathered face hardened like stone. She'd been a nurse for 40 years before retiring, and she'd seen enough to know when a woman was truly alone. Without a word, she took Emily's hand, her grip steady and warm. "Then we do this together," Mary said simply, like women have been doing for thousands of years. The next 6 hours blurred together in a haze of pain, exhaustion, and determination. Mary never left Emily's side, wiping her forehead with cool cloths, whispering encouragement, and occasionally muttering what sounded like creative curses about absent husbands. Dr. Patel monitored the baby's heart rate with growing concern. "He's in distress," he announced around hour 7. "We need to consider a C-section." "No," Emily gasped. "I can do this. I have to do this." Mary squeezed her hand. "You listen to me, Emily Caroline. You've been doing everything alone for months. You're the strongest woman I know, and you're going to bring this baby safely into the world." At 10:47 a.m., as the Miami sun finally broke through the morning clouds, Lucas Noah Parker took his first breath. But instead of the joyful cry Emily had expected, he was silent, too silent. "Why isn't he crying?" Emily asked, her voice breaking. "Is he okay?" The NICU team was already moving, working with practiced efficiency. Lucas was whisked away before Emily could even see his face clearly, leaving her arms empty and her heart shattered. Respiratory distress. Dr. Patel explained gently. "It's common with premature babies. He's being taken care of." Emily stared at the ceiling, feeling hollow. Her phone had been buzzing intermittently throughout the labor, but she'd ignored it. Now, as Mary handed it to her, she saw 17 missed calls from various numbers, dozens of text messages and notifications from every social media platform she had. The yacht photo had exploded overnight. Someone had recognized Noah, tagged his company, and the comments were brutal. "Isn't this the guy whose wife just had a baby? What kind of man abandons his pregnant wife? Hope she takes him for everything he's worth." Emily scrolled through the messages, her heart growing colder with each one. 3 were from Noah himself, sent in the last hour. "Babe, I'm seeing some crazy stuff online. Call me, Emily. This is getting out of hand. We need to talk. I'm flying back. Don't talk to anyone until I get there." Not one word about the baby, not one question about whether she was okay. Mary was reading over her shoulder, her expression growing darker by the minute. "7 years," she muttered. 7 years you've been making excuses for this man. I thought he loved me." Emily whispered, her voice barely audible. "I thought he wanted this baby. Maybe he did, in his own selfish way." Mary said, settling into the chair beside the bed. "But love isn't something you turn on and off depending on your mood. Love shows up. Love answers the phone. Love doesn't abandon you when you need it most." Through the window, Emily could see the parking lot filling up with the lunch crowd. Normal people going about their normal lives while hers crumbled around her. A nurse knocked on the door, a different one this time, younger, with a tablet in her hands. "Mrs. Parker, I have some information about your son." Emily's breath caught. "Is he okay?" "He's stable, but he'll need to stay in the NICU for a few weeks. Premature lungs, but strong heart. The doctors are optimistic." The nurse paused, glancing at the tablet. "There's also been some unusual activity regarding media requests. Apparently, there's been some social media attention around your family." Mary stood up, her 5-foot frame somehow filling the room with protective energy. "No media, no visitors except family, and if anyone asks, you don't know anything." The nurse nodded and left, but the damage was done. Emily's private heartbreak was becoming public entertainment. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from a number she didn't recognize. "Saw the news about your husband. If you need legal advice, I'm here. Sarah Chen, family law attorney. I've been where you are." Emily stared at the message, something shifting inside her chest. The pain was still there, sharp and immediate, but underneath it was something else, something that felt almost like possibility. "Aunt Mary," she said quietly, "I think I want to see my son now." Mary smiled, the first real smile Emily had seen from her all day. "Now you're talking." As they walked down the hallway toward the NICU, Emily's phone continued to buzz with messages of support from strangers, legal offers, and increasingly desperate texts from Noah. She turned the phone face down and kept walking. For the first time in years, she wasn't waiting for her husband's permission to move forward. The NICU was a universe of soft beeping and whispered conversations. Emily pressed her face against the glass wall, staring at the maze of incubators and machines that kept the smallest fighters alive. Her heart hammered as Nurse Patricia guided her to isolette number 7. "There he is," Patricia said softly, her voice carrying the gentle authority of someone who'd witnessed thousands of tiny miracles. Lucas Noah. Emily's breath caught in her throat. He was so small, barely 5 pounds of perfect human being, with tubes and wires that seemed to overwhelm his delicate frame, but his little chest rose and fell steadily. And when she placed her palm against the incubator's warm surface, he seemed to sense her presence. "He's beautiful," Mary whispered, appearing beside her. "Look at those long fingers. He's going to be a pianist." "Or a writer," Emily murmured. A laugh bubbled up through her tears, half joy, half sheer exhaustion, as she pressed her forehead gently to the glass. In that tiny body, she saw every reason she had left to fight. Tears streaming down her face like his mom. Patricia smiled, checking Lucas's monitors. "Premature babies are fighters. He's already showing good signs. Breathing on his own for longer periods. Heart rate stable. The next few days will tell us more. But I've seen plenty of NICU graduates go on to run marathons." Emily's phone buzzed insistently in her pocket. She'd been ignoring it for the past hour, but the frequency was becoming impossible to ignore. With reluctance, she pulled it out. 12 missed calls from Noah, 23 text messages. The latest one made her stomach clench. "Emily, I'm at the airport. Whatever you're seeing online, it's not what it looks like. We need to talk before you do something you'll regret." Something she'd regret. Emily stared at the message, feeling something cold and sharp crystallize in her chest. 7 years of marriage, and his first concern wasn't their son's health or her well-being. It was damage control. A bitter laugh escaped her lips, startling Mary beside her. After everything, the betrayal, the lies, he still thought she'd care enough to protect his image before protecting herself and her baby. "He's flying back," she told Mary quietly. Mary's weathered face hardened. "That man has some nerve." "Mrs. Parker?" A new voice interrupted them. Emily turned to see a young woman in a navy blazer, her dark hair pulled back in a professional bun. "I'm Sarah Chen, the attorney who texted you earlier. I hope you don't mind me coming in person." Emily blinked in surprise. "How did you—" "I have a friend who works in the maternity ward. When I heard about your situation," Sarah's expression softened. "I went through something similar 3 years ago. Not exactly the same, but close enough to recognize the signs." Mary stepped forward, protective instincts on full display. "And what signs would those be?" Sarah's smile was gentle but knowing. A woman who's been gaslit for so long she doesn't trust her own intuition. A husband who's more worried about his reputation than his family. And a social media explosion that's about to get much worse before it gets better. As if summoned by her words, Emily's phone buzzed again. This time it was a notification from Instagram. Someone had tagged her in a post. With trembling fingers, she opened it. The image was a screenshot of Noah's LinkedIn profile, where he posted motivational quotes about family values and building a legacy just 2 weeks ago. The comment section was brutal, aged like milk. "This you on the yacht while your wife was giving birth. Hope your legacy includes paying child support." "Mrs. Parker," Sarah continued, "I want you to know that you have options. Good options. Florida is an equitable distribution state, and abandonment during pregnancy is taken very seriously by family courts." Emily felt Mary's hand on her shoulder, steady and reassuring. "What kind of options?" "Full custody given the circumstances, significant spousal support while you get back on your feet, and if his business takes a hit from this publicity, which it probably will, that works in your favor for asset division." Through the NICU window, Emily watched Lucas's tiny chest rise and fall. He was fighting for every breath, completely dependent on machines and strangers for survival, just like she was in a way. "I don't want his money," she said quietly. "I just want him to leave us alone." "Honey," Mary said gently, "wanting to be left alone is a luxury you can't afford right now. You have a son to think about." medical bills, your own recovery. You can't live on good intentions. Sarah nodded. Your aunt's right. And from what I've seen online, your husband's company is taking a significant hit. Parker Construction's Facebook page is flooded with negative reviews. 3 clients have already posted about terminating contracts. Emily's phone rang, and Noah's name flashed on the screen. For a moment, she considered answering. 7 years of conditioning made her hand move toward the phone automatically. But then she looked at Lucas, struggling to breathe in his plastic cocoon, and something inside her shifted. A spark of steel threaded through her exhaustion. He had stolen enough of her choices. Not this one. Not anymore. She declined the call. Tell me what I need to do, she said to Sarah. For the next hour, Sarah outlined Emily's legal options while Mary held down the fort beside Lucas's incubator. The more Emily learned about her rights, the more she realized how much she'd given up over the years. Shared bank accounts that Noah controlled, a house in his name, only credit cards she wasn't even listed on. Each fact burned like a fresh betrayal. All the moments she trusted him with her future, while he built his escape plan piece by piece. The good news, Sarah explained, is that Florida recognizes emotional abandonment. The fact that he was publicly with another woman while you were in labor creates a compelling narrative for any judge. What about the other woman? Emily asked. Brielle? Sarah's expression darkened slightly. Brielle Cade. I looked her up. Fitness influencer. About 200K followers. Or she had 200K followers. She's lost about 30,000 since yesterday. Apparently, her brand was built on authentic living and positive relationships. Being exposed as a homewrecker doesn't exactly align with that image. Emily felt a flicker of something that might have been satisfaction. Good. The thing is, Sarah continued, influencers like her live and die by their reputation. If this story gets picked up by the wrong blogs, her career could be over. That might make her desperate, which could work in our favor or against us. As if summoned by their conversation, Emily's phone buzzed with a direct message on Instagram. The profile picture showed Brielle's perfect face, but the message was anything but polished. We need to talk. This is getting out of hand. I never meant for it to go this far. Emily showed the message to Sarah, who raised an eyebrow. Interesting. She's scared. Should I respond? Absolutely not. Let her stew. Desperate people make mistakes, and we want to be ready to document every single one. A commotion near the NICU entrance made them all turn. Through the glass doors, Emily could see a tall figure in an expensive suit arguing with the security guard. Her stomach dropped. Noah had arrived. He can't come in here, Patricia said firmly, appearing at Emily's elbow. NICU is restricted to parents and approved family members only. I'm the father, Noah's voice carried through the glass, smooth and authoritative. That's my son in there. And I'm the mother, Emily said, her voice stronger than she felt. And I don't want him here. Sarah stepped forward. Mrs. Parker, you have every right to restrict access, especially given the circumstances. Through the glass, Emily watched Noah's face cycle through emotions, frustration, anger, and something that might have been genuine hurt. He looked tired, his usually perfect hair disheveled, his shirt wrinkled from travel. For a moment, she almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Then she remembered the yacht photo, the missed calls during labor, the text messages that prioritized his reputation over their son's health. No, she said clearly. He can see Lucas when I'm not here. Through the glass only, and he can call to check on medical updates, but I don't want to see him. Noah's expression hardened. He pulled out his phone, probably calling his own lawyer. The game was beginning in earnest. Mrs. Parker, Patricia said gently, the shortages are almost over. Visiting hours are almost over with Lucas? Emily nodded, and the small group moved toward the incubator. Sarah and Mary hung back, giving her space. Placing her hand on the warm plastic, Emily whispered, I'm sorry, baby boy. I'm sorry your daddy isn't who I thought he was, but I promise you this. I will never ever let anyone treat you the way he treated me. You deserve better. We both do. Lucas's tiny fingers flexed, and for a moment Emily could swear he was reaching toward her voice. I love you, she whispered, and I'm going to fight for you, for us. As they prepared to leave, Emily's phone buzzed one more time. Another text from Noah. You're making a mistake. I can provide for Lucas in ways you never could. Don't let your hurt feelings destroy his future. Emily stared at the message, feeling the familiar manipulation trying to take root in her mind. The suggestion that she was being emotional, irrational, that she was somehow harming their son by refusing to accept his behavior. But this time, it didn't work. She screenshotted the message and sent it to Sarah. "Evidence," she said simply. Mary smiled. The first genuine smile Emily had seen from her in days. "Now you're learning." As they walked out of the hospital, Emily felt something she hadn't experienced in years. The solid ground of her own decisions beneath her feet. Lucas was fighting for his life and she was going to fight for his future. The war was just beginning. The house felt foreign when Emily returned the next evening. Mary had insisted she rest at home while Lucas remained stable in the NICU. But walking through the front door felt like entering a museum of a life she no longer recognized. Everything was exactly as she'd left it 36 hours ago. Noah's coffee mug still sat unwashed in the sink, his business magazines scattered across the kitchen counter. The nursery door stood half open, revealing the crib she'd assembled alone. The mobile she'd hung with such hope. "Sit down," Mary commanded, steering Emily toward the couch. "I'll make some tea." "Real tea, not those fancy herbal things you've been drinking." Emily sank into the cushions, suddenly exhausted. Her body ached from the C-section, but it was nothing compared to the weight of decisions pressing down on her. Her phone had been buzzing constantly. Reporters, bloggers, people from high school she hadn't spoken to in years, all wanting to know her side of the story. The doorbell rang. "I'll get it," Mary said sharply, but Emily was already standing. Through the peephole, she could see a delivery driver holding an enormous bouquet of white roses. Her stomach turned. Only one person sent her white roses. "Miss Parker?" the driver asked when she opened the door. "Delivery from Petals and Stems." Emily accepted the arrangement with trembling hands. The card was written in Noah's familiar scroll. "For my wife and son. I'm sorry, let me explain." 47 white roses, Mary observed, reading over her shoulder. "That's oddly specific." Emily felt sick. "It's how many days until Lucas's due date. He used to send me roses for special occasions." "Well, isn't that romantic?" Mary said dryly. "Flowers instead of showing up to the birth of his child." Before Emily could respond, her phone rang. Sarah Chen's name appeared on the screen. "Emily, I need to talk to you. Are you home?" "Yes, but I'm outside. We have a problem." Sarah appeared at the door moments later, her usually composed demeanor cracked with urgency. She carried a tablet and a manila folder thick with documents. "Noah moved fast," she said without preamble. "He filed for emergency joint custody this morning, claiming you're emotionally unstable and preventing him from seeing his son." Emily felt the floor shift beneath her. "What?" "It gets worse. He's hired Marcus Webb, best family attorney in Miami. They're arguing that your social media activity shows vindictive behavior and that using Lucas as a weapon against his father." "What social media activity?" Emily demanded. "I haven't posted anything." Sarah turned the tablet toward her. Emily's Instagram account was open, showing a post from 2 hours ago. A photo of the white roses with the caption, "Some men think flowers fix everything. Too bad they can't buy back the trust they destroyed. Single mom betrayed and moving on." Emily stared at the screen in horror. "I didn't write this. I didn't post this." Mary leaned in, studying the image. "Someone has your password." "Noah," Emily whispered. "He set up all my accounts when we got married. He said it was easier if he managed our digital presence." The words tasted bitter now. She thought he was being helpful. Now she realized it was control. Sarah was already typing on her phone. "We're changing all your passwords immediately, but the damage is done. This post has over 500 comments already, and Webb will use it to paint you as unstable." Emily scrolled through the comments, feeling nauseous. Some were supportive, but others were cruel. "Gold digger using her baby for sympathy. Both parents are trash. Feel sorry for that kid. She's clearly having a breakdown." Each word burrowed under her skin like a splinter. Strangers judging her darkest moments when they hadn't seen the nights she'd cried alone. The mornings she'd forced herself up for work. The way she'd protected Lucas before he even took his first breath. "This is why I deleted all my social media," Mary muttered. "Nothing but a cesspool of strangers with opinions." Sarah set down the tablet. "There's more." Noah's claiming you've been suffering from severe prenatal depression and that he was taking a necessary break for his mental health when the yacht incident occurred. A necessary break? Emily's voice cracked. I was in labor. I know, but his lawyer is spinning it as a pre-planned therapeutic retreat that unfortunately coincided with Lucas's early arrival. They're arguing he couldn't have known you'd go into labor 3 weeks early. Emily felt everything spinning out of control. How had she gone from victim to villain in less than 48 hours? The walls of her house felt smaller with every breath, suffocating her with memories of all the times she'd convinced herself she was safe here. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Stop talking to lawyers and reporters. You're hurting Lucas's future. Think about what's best for our son. And he's texting me from a different number, Emily said, showing Sarah. Document everything. Screenshot it. Sarah's expression was grim. He's trying to intimidate you into dropping the legal action. The doorbell rang again. This time, Mary peered through the peephole and cursed under her breath. Newsvan. Channel 5. Sarah confirmed, looking out the window. The story's gone regional. Emily watched through the curtains as a perfectly coiffed reporter checked her reflection in the van's side mirror. In the distance, she could see neighbors peering from their windows, some taking photos with their phones. A hot shame crawled up her neck, not because of what she'd done, but because of what people thought she had. I can't stay here, Emily realized. This is insane. You're right, Mary said decisively. Pack a bag. You're coming to my place until this dies down. As Emily threw clothes into a suitcase, her hands shaking, she tried to process how quickly her life had disintegrated. 3 days ago, she'd been a pregnant wife, excited about becoming a mother. Now she was fleeing her own home like a criminal. Each shirt she folded felt like a piece of her old self she might never get back. But maybe that wasn't such a bad thing. Sarah appeared in the bedroom doorway. Emily, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Has Noah ever been physically violent with you? No, Emily said automatically, then paused. Not like hitting, but he used to grab my wrist when he was angry, and he'd corner me during arguments, get really close, use his height to intimidate me. That's still domestic intimidation. What about financial control? Emily's stomach sank as she realized the extent of her dependence. All our accounts are joint, but he manages everything. I have a credit card, but he reviews all the statements. When I wanted to buy groceries or clothes, I had to ask. And you didn't see this as controlling? He said he was better with money, that it was more efficient. Emily heard how naive she sounded. He made me feel like I was bad at adult things. Sarah nodded grimly. Classic financial abuse. We can use this. Emily's phone buzzed again. This time it was a call from the hospital. Mrs. Parker, this is Dr. Patel. Lucas is doing well, but I wanted to let you know that your husband attempted to visit this morning. When he was denied access, he became quite aggressive with our staff. Emily's heart raced. Aggressive? How? Raised voice, demanded to speak to supervisors, threatened to call lawyers. Security had to escort him out. I've put additional notes in Lucas's file about restricting access. Thank you, Emily managed. I'll be there tonight for visiting hours. After she hung up, Sarah was watching her carefully. How do you feel about what just happened? Scared, Emily admitted, but also angry. He's trying to control everyone. Me, the hospital staff, even our son. Good. Hold on to that anger. It'll keep you strong for what's coming. As they loaded the car to leave for Mary's house, Emily took one last look at the home she'd shared with Noah for 7 years. The white roses sat on the kitchen counter, already wilting in the heat. Her phone buzzed with one final message from Noah's new number. I know you're reading this. You can't run forever. I'll see you in court. Emily screenshotted the message and sent it to Sarah without hesitation. Let him try, she whispered, surprising herself with the steel in her voice. Mary started the engine, and they drove away from the news van, the curious neighbors, and the life Emily had thought she wanted. As they pulled out of the subdivision, Emily saw a black BMW parked across the street. Through the tinted windows, she caught a glimpse of platinum blonde hair. Brielle was watching her run. Emily met her gaze through the car window and didn't look away first. For the first time since this nightmare began, she wasn't the one backing down. The predator was about to learn that she'd awakened something dangerous in her prey. Mary's house in Coral Springs was a sanctuary of mismatched furniture and the smell of homemade soup. The guest bedroom was small but clean, with a window that overlooked a garden where tomatoes grew wild and free. Emily sat on the edge of the narrow bed staring at her phone as notifications continued to pour in. The story had exploded overnight. Yachtgate was trending on Twitter, and someone had created a TikTok compilation of Noah's old LinkedIn posts about family values set to dramatic music. The video had 2.3 million views. "Eat something," Mary commanded, appearing in the doorway with a bowl of chicken soup. "You're no good to Lucas if you collapse." Emily accepted the soup gratefully, realizing she hadn't eaten since yesterday. "How did this get so big?" "Because people recognize a hypocrite when they see one," Mary said, settling into the room's only chair. "And they especially hate men who abandon pregnant wives. Trust me, I've seen enough of them in my 40 years of nursing." Sarah Chen knocked on the open door, her expression grave. "We need to talk, both of you." She entered carrying her laptop and that same thick manila folder. The good news is that Noah's strategy is backfiring spectacularly. His company's stock price dropped 15% yesterday, and 3 major clients have publicly terminated their contracts. "What's the bad news?" Emily asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know. Brielle Cade posted a video this morning, a tearful confession claiming she's the real victim here. Sarah turned her laptop screen toward them. Brielle's face filled the frame, makeup streaked with tears, her usually perfect hair disheveled. She was sitting in what looked like a hotel room, speaking directly to the camera. "I never wanted any of this to happen," Brielle sobbed. "Yes, I was with Noah on that yacht, but I had no idea his wife was pregnant. He told me they were separated, that the divorce was already in progress. I would never ever knowingly get involved with a married man." Emily felt sick. "She's lying." "Of course she is," Mary snorted, "but she's young and pretty and crying. Some people will believe her." The video continued. "I'm getting death threats. People are calling me a homewrecker. My family is being harassed, all because I trusted someone who lied to me." Brielle looked directly into the camera. "Emily, if you're watching this, I'm so sorry. I didn't know about you or your baby. Please don't let Noah destroy both of our lives." Sarah paused the video. "It's already got 500,000 views. The comments are split. Some people are calling her out, but others are buying the innocent victim routine." "What does this mean for the custody case?" Emily asked. "It complicates things. If Brielle maintains this narrative and Noah goes along with it, they might try to paint him as a victim of manipulation too. Classic narcissist move. Everyone's a victim except the actual victim." Emily's phone rang. Dr. Patel's name appeared on the screen. "Mrs. Parker, I wanted to update you on Lucas's progress. He's doing wonderfully. We might be able to remove the breathing assistance tomorrow." Relief flooded through Emily. "That's amazing news." "There's something else. We've had several media requests asking for statements about Lucas's condition. I wanted to make sure you're aware before we issue our standard no-comment response." "Media requests about my baby?" Emily's voice rose. "Unfortunately, yes. The public interest in your family situation has extended to questions about Lucas's health. We're not releasing any information, of course, but I thought you should know." After hanging up, Emily felt the walls closing in. It wasn't enough that her marriage had exploded publicly. Now strangers were trying to intrude on her son's medical privacy. "I need air," she said, standing abruptly. She walked out to Mary's back porch where the Florida heat wrapped around her like a suffocating blanket. In the distance, she could hear the normal sounds of suburban life. Lawnmowers, children playing, dogs barking. It felt surreal that the world was continuing normally while hers crumbled. Her phone buzzed with a text from yet another unknown number. "Check your email. Time to end this. N." With trembling fingers, Emily opened her email app. Noah had sent her a document titled Settlement Proposal. The terms made a stomach lurch. Immediate joint custody of Lucas. Emily would receive $2,000 monthly support for 2 years. She would sign a non-disclosure agreement about their marriage. All social media accounts would be deactivated. She would not speak to media about their relationship. In exchange, Noah would not pursue claims of her emotional instability and would provide health insurance for Lucas. He's trying to buy my silence, Emily said when Sarah read the proposal for peanuts. Sarah agreed. 2,000 a month wouldn't even cover daycare costs, and the NDA clause is particularly insulting. He wants to make sure you can never tell your side of the story. Mary looked up from her knitting. What does your gut tell you, Emily? Emily closed her eyes, trying to access the intuition she'd suppressed for so long. That he's scared, really scared. If he's offering anything at all, it means he knows he's losing. Smart girl, Mary said approvingly. Sarah's phone rang. She answered with a crisp, Sarah Chen. Then, her expression grew increasingly tense. When? How many? Okay, we'll be right there. She hung up, her face pale. That was hospital security. There's a crowd of protesters outside the NICU. Protesters? Emily felt dizzy. About 50 people with signs. Some supporting you, some supporting Noah. It's turned into a circus. The hospital is considering closing the unit to all visitors until it dies down. Emily thought of Lucas, fighting for every breath while strangers argued about his parents' marriage outside his window. The image made her furious. No, she said firmly, I'm not letting these people keep me from my son. Emily, it might not be safe. I don't care. Emily was already moving toward the door. Lucas needs me, and I'm not hiding anymore. The drive back to Miami felt like traveling toward a war zone. Sarah made calls to arrange a back entrance, while Mary muttered increasingly creative curses about people with too much time on their hands. As they approached Mercy General Hospital, Emily could see the crowd Sarah had described. Signs waved in the air. Justice for Emily. Men's rights matter. Protect baby Lucas. News vans lined the street and police barriers had been set up to keep the crowds back. This is insane, Emily whispered. This is what happens when private pain becomes public entertainment, Sarah said grimly. They used the staff entrance, sneaking through hospital corridors like criminals. But when Emily finally reached Lucas's incubator, all the chaos faded away. He was awake, his tiny blue eyes tracking her movement. The breathing tube was gone, replaced by a small nasal cannula. He looked stronger, more alert. Hello, baby boy, Emily whispered, placing her hand on the incubator. Mama's here? As if responding to her voice, Lucas's little hand moved toward the sound. For a moment, Emily felt peace. Then her phone buzzed. A text from Brielle's number. We need to talk. Just us. I have something you need to know about Noah. Meet me at the Starbucks on Biscayne in an hour. Come alone. Emily stared at the message, her heart racing. What could Brielle possibly tell her that she didn't already know? Sarah read the message over her shoulder. It's obviously a trap. Maybe, Emily said slowly. Or maybe she's finally ready to tell the truth. You can't seriously be considering this. Emily looked at Lucas, then at the chaos visible through the NICU windows. Protesters, media, lawyers, all of them using her pain for their own purposes. I'm tired of other people controlling my story, she said quietly. Maybe it's time I took control back. Mary appeared beside them, having read the message. If you're going to meet this girl, you're not going alone. The message said, I don't care what the message said. I've been dealing with manipulative people longer than you've been alive. Mary's voice was steel wrapped in velvet. That little homewrecker wants to play games? Fine, but she's going to play by our rules. Emily felt something shift inside her chest, a feeling that was part fear, part anticipation, part grim determination. Outside the hospital windows, the protesters continued their chants. But Emily was no longer listening to their noise. She was finally ready to start making her own. The Starbucks on Biscayne Boulevard buzzed with its usual afternoon crowd. Business people grabbing coffee, students hunched over laptops, mothers with strollers navigating between tables. Emily sat in a corner booth, her hands wrapped around a chai latte she couldn't bring herself to drink. Mary was positioned 3 tables away, pretending to read a magazine while keeping watch. Brielle arrived 20 minutes late, wearing oversized sunglasses and a baseball cap pulled low. Even disguised, her platinum hair and perfect posture made her unmistakable. She'd traded her usual crop tops for jeans and a baggy sweater, but she still moved with the calculated grace of someone accustomed to being watched. Thank you for coming, Brielle said, sliding into the booth across from Emily. Up close, she looked exhausted. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her usually flawless makeup was minimal, almost non-existent. I almost didn't, Emily replied honestly. Start talking. Brielle glanced around nervously, then leaned forward. That video I posted this morning about not knowing you were pregnant? That was Noah's idea. Emily felt her jaw clench. So you lied? Yes, but not about everything. Brielle's voice was barely above a whisper. I really didn't know you were in labor that night. He told me you were visiting your sick aunt in Coral Springs. But you knew I existed. Brielle nodded miserably. He said you were separated, that the divorce papers were already filed. He showed me fake documents, rental agreements for his own apartment, bank statements for a separate account. He's been planning this for months, Emily. Emily's blood ran cold. Planning what? Leaving you, but not until after the baby was born. He wanted to. Establish paternity, then file for custody, he said. Brielle paused, looking sick. He said you had a history of depression and that you'd be an unfit mother. The words hit Emily like physical blows. He's been building a case against me. He recorded your phone calls when you cried about feeling overwhelmed during pregnancy. He saved screenshots of the pregnancy apps on your phone when you searched for information about prenatal anxiety. Brielle's voice broke. He even had his assistant call your OB's office, pretending to be from your insurance company, fishing for information about your mental health. Emily felt the world tilt sideways. The man she'd married, the father of her child, had been systematically gathering ammunition to destroy her. Why are you telling me this? Emily asked. Brielle pulled out her phone, scrolling through messages. Because I found out what kind of man he really is. She turned the screen toward Emily. The messages were from Noah, sent just 2 hours ago. The video was perfect. Now we need to coordinate our stories for court. Remember, you're the victim here. I was seduced by a younger woman during a vulnerable time in my marriage. Once I get full custody, we can be together publicly. Lucas will have a stable 2-parent home. Don't this up, Bree. There's too much money at stake. Emily stared at the messages, her hands shaking. He's using both of us? He promised me we'd get married once his divorce was final. He said you were frigid, that you trapped him with the pregnancy. Brielle's tears were real now. I was so stupid. I thought I was saving him from a loveless marriage. How long? Emily asked quietly. 8 months. Since last September. He'd take me to hotels, always paid cash, said he was protecting me from the messy divorce proceedings. Brielle laughed bitterly. I actually thought I was being considerate by staying out of it. Emily thought back to September, when she was 12 weeks pregnant, dealing with morning sickness and exhaustion. When Noah had started working late more frequently, when he'd become distant and critical. He made me feel crazy, Emily whispered, like I was imagining things. That's what he does. He told me you were paranoid and jealous, that you accused him of cheating constantly. Brielle paused. Were you accusing him? No, I never said a word. I just felt something was wrong. Brielle closed her eyes. God, what have I done? Emily studied the young woman across from her. Yesterday, she'd been the enemy, the beautiful other woman who'd stolen her husband. Now she looked like what she really was, another victim of Noah's manipulation. What do you want from me? Emily asked. I want to make this right. I have evidence, photos, texts, receipts. I can prove he's been lying about everything, but... Brielle hesitated. If I testify against him, my career is over. The influencer world doesn't forgive women who break up marriages, even if we were lied to. Your career is already over, Emily said bluntly. You lost 40,000 followers yesterday. Brielle flinched. I know, but there might be a chance to rebuild if I play the victim card. If I testify against Noah, I become the villain who destroyed a family. Emily felt a flicker of anger. Even now, even after everything, Brielle was thinking about her image first. So, what exactly are you proposing? I give you everything I have on Noah. Bank records, hotel receipts, photos with timestamps. In exchange, you don't drag me through court as a co-defendant in the custody case. Emily considered this. The evidence Brielle was offering could be devastating to Noah's case, but letting her walk away felt like letting her escape consequences. I need to see what you have first, Emily said. Brielle pulled out a flash drive. It's all on here. 8 months of evidence. He was so careful with you, but he got sloppy with me, probably because he thought I was too young and starstruck to pay attention. Emily pocketed the drive. I'll have my lawyer review it. There's something else. Brielle said hesitantly. He's not as rich as he pretends to be. The yacht wasn't his. He rented it for the weekend to impress me, and his company is in serious financial trouble. Has been for months. This was news to Emily. Noah had always insisted on managing their finances alone, claiming his business acumen made him better suited for it. How do you know? He drinks when he's stressed. Last month, he got wasted and told me everything. The construction industry took a hit during the recession, and he's been using credit and loans to maintain appearances. The house you live in, second mortgage. The cars, leased. He was counting on a big commercial project to save him, but it fell through in January. When Emily was in her second trimester, when Noah had become increasingly controlling about money, when he'd started making comments about her being financially irresponsible. He was going to leave me with nothing, Emily realized. Worse than nothing. He was going to leave you with his debts while he disappeared with the baby and whatever liquid assets he could hide. Emily felt sick. The man she'd loved, trusted, built a life with had been planning to destroy her completely. Why should I believe you? She asked. How do I know this isn't another manipulation? Brielle was quiet for a long moment. You don't. But look at me, Emily. Really, look at me. She removed her sunglasses, revealing eyes swollen from crying. I'm 27 years old. 3 days ago I had a successful business, a beautiful apartment, and what I thought was a loving relationship. Now, I'm hiding in coffee shops. My sponsorships are gone, and I'm getting death threats. If I was going to lie, don't you think I'd come up with something that made me look better? Emily studied Brielle's face, her gut intuition working overtime. The young woman was scared, humiliated, and desperate, but she was telling the truth. What happens now? Emily asked. I disappear, delete my social media, break my lease, go stay with my sister in Portland until this blows over. Maybe. Start over somewhere new. And Noah? Brielle's expression hardened. Noah gets what he deserves. I was just the latest in a long line of women he's used. You were right to fight him. Emily stood to leave, then paused. Brielle, that video you posted this morning, delete it. What? Delete it? If you really want to make this right, stop lying for him. Brielle nodded slowly. Okay. As Emily walked away, she felt Mary fall into step beside her. Get everything you needed? Mary asked quietly. More than I expected, Emily replied, patting her pocket where the flash drive rested. Much more. They drove back to Coral Springs in silence. But Emily's mind was racing. The evidence Brielle had given her could destroy Noah's custody case and expose his financial fraud. But more than that, it validated everything she'd felt but couldn't prove. She wasn't crazy. She wasn't paranoid. She'd been right all along. A sharp sense of relief tangled with her anger, forming something fierce and alive in her chest. All the nights she'd laid awake questioning herself. Gone. Now she had proof. Now she had power. Her phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Brielle's video has been deleted. Interesting timing. How did the meeting go? Emily smiled. The first genuine smile she'd felt in days. Better than expected, she typed back. I have a story to tell you. As they pulled into Mary's driveway, Emily felt something she hadn't experienced in months. Hope. Not just hope for survival, but hope for victory. Noah had underestimated her, just like he'd underestimated Brielle. He thought he was the smartest person in the room, the master manipulator who could control everyone around him. He was about to learn how wrong he was. Sarah Chen's law office was a testament to understated success. Mahogany furniture, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, and windows that offered a commanding view of downtown Miami. Emily sat across from Sarah's desk, watching her lawyer's expression grow increasingly grim as she scrolled through the contents of Brielle's flash drive. This is... Sarah paused, pushing her glasses up her nose. This is a prosecutor's dream. Noah didn't just commit adultery. He committed fraud, conspiracy, and possible identity theft. Mary, perched in the corner chair with her knitting, looked up sharply. Identity theft? He impersonated insurance representatives to obtain Emily's medical records. That's a federal crime. Sarah clicked through more files. And look at this. Bank statements showing cash withdrawals that exactly matched the dates and amounts of hotel stays with Brielle. He was literally using family money to fund his affair. Emily felt a strange mix of vindication and nausea. Every number on the screen was another slap, Another reminder of how thoroughly he'd betrayed her trust while pretending to protect her. How much? Conservatively, about $28,000 over 8 months. Hotels, restaurants, gifts, that yacht rental. Sarah shook her head. He was hemorrhaging money while telling you that you needed to cut back on groceries. The irony was bitter. Emily remembered the fights about her buying organic produce. The way Noah had made her feel guilty for wanting to take prenatal vitamins that weren't covered by insurance. Meanwhile, he was spending hundreds of dollars on wine for his girlfriend. "What else is on there?" Emily asked. Sarah opened another folder. Photos with timestamps that directly contradict his whereabouts claims. "Look at this." She turned the laptop screen toward Emily. This photo of Noah and Brielle at a restaurant in Brickell is dated March 15th. According to his business calendar, which we subpoenaed, he was supposedly in Tampa meeting with contractors that day. He lied to his own employees repeatedly. He had his assistant make up fake meeting schedules to cover his absences. That's conspiracy to commit fraud. Sarah's fingers flew across the keyboard. But the real gold mine is his financial situation. Brielle was right, he's broke. The screen filled with bank statements, loan documents, and credit reports that painted a picture of financial desperation. Noah's construction company owed nearly $300,000 in unpaid invoices. The house Emily had called home was 3 months behind on mortgage payments. His business credit cards were maxed out. "He's been living on borrowed time," Sarah explained. The yacht rental, the expensive dinners, the hotel stays. He was spending money he didn't have to maintain an image of success. Emily thought about all the times Noah had criticized her spending, all the ways he'd made her feel like a financial burden. He was projecting classic narcissistic behavior. Accuse others of what you're guilty of. Sarah pulled up another document. This is particularly damning. Loan applications where he listed you as a co-signer without your knowledge or consent. Emily's blood ran cold. What does that mean? It means you're technically liable for debts you never agreed to. But since he forged your signature, we can prove fraud and have you removed from liability. Sarah's expression was grim. The question is whether there are assets left to divide. Mary set down her knitting with unusual force. That son of a was planning to destroy her financially and then disappear. "It's worse than that," Sarah said, opening the final folder. "Look at this email thread between Noah and his lawyer from 3 weeks ago." Emily read over Sarah's shoulder, her horror growing with each line. Need to establish pattern of Emily's instability before birth. Can we use her pregnancy anxiety medication as evidence of mental health issues? Hospital records might be obtainable through medical discovery. Worth pursuing if it supports unfitness claims. Timing crucial. Need custody filing immediately after birth while she's physically and emotionally vulnerable. Recorded evidence of her emotional outbursts should be sufficient for emergency custody petition. Emily felt sick. He recorded me crying. Sarah nodded grimly. According to these files, he has hours of audio from your pregnancy. Conversations where you expressed normal anxiety about becoming a first-time mother. Moments when you cried about feeling overwhelmed. He was planning to use your natural emotions as evidence that you're unfit to raise Lucas. The betrayal cut deeper than the affair. Noah hadn't just cheated on her. He'd weaponized her vulnerabilities, turning her trust against her. "Can we use this against him?" Emily asked. Absolutely. Recording someone without their consent is illegal in Florida. These recordings are inadmissible, and the fact that he planned to use them shows premeditation. Sarah leaned back in her chair. "Emily, with this evidence, we can destroy his custody case and probably have him criminally prosecuted." Emily's phone buzzed with a text from the hospital. "Lucas is ready to come off oxygen support completely. Doctor wants to discuss discharge planning." Her son was getting stronger while his father's world crumbled. The irony wasn't lost on her. "There's something else," Sarah said carefully. Brielle included text messages between her and Noah from this morning. Sarah pulled up the message thread. Noah's tone grew increasingly desperate as Brielle stopped responding. "Why did you delete the video? We talked about this. People are asking questions. Stick to the script." "Brielle, answer me. This is important. If you're thinking about changing your story, remember what we discussed about mutually assured destruction. I know where you live. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. The last message sent chills down Emily's spine. Is he threatening her? It sure sounds like it. And if he's threatening her, he might escalate with you too. Sarah's expression was serious. I'm recommending we file for an emergency restraining order. Mary stood up abruptly. I'm calling my nephew Danny. He's a sheriff's deputy in Coral Springs. Emily's not going anywhere without protection. As Mary made her calls, Emily stared at the evidence spread across Sarah's desk. 8 months of systematic deception, financial fraud, and emotional manipulation. The man she'd married was a stranger. Worse than a stranger. He was a predator who'd been stalking her own life. What happens next? Emily asked. We file everything with the court tomorrow. The financial fraud, the illegal recordings, the falsified documents. Noah's emergency custody petition will be dead in the water, and he'll be facing serious criminal charges. And Brielle, she'll probably have to testify, but given that she was also a victim of his fraud, I doubt she'll face serious legal consequences. The prosecutor will want her cooperation more than her conviction. Emily's phone rang. Noah's name appeared on the screen, and she felt her stomach clench with familiar anxiety. Then she remembered the evidence spread before her, the months of planning he'd done to destroy her, and the anxiety transformed into something harder. She answered the call. Emily, we need to talk. Noah's voice was tight with controlled anger. I know you met with Brielle today. How do you know that? I have friends everywhere, including that coffee shop. What did she tell you? Emily met Sarah's eyes, who nodded encouragingly. The truth. Her version of the truth? You mean she's a manipulative little liar who's trying to save her own skin? Noah's voice grew harder. Don't let her poison you against me. Think about Lucas's future. I'm thinking about Lucas's future. That's why I'm making sure he never has to live with a father who lies, cheats, and steals. The silence on the other end stretched for several seconds. When Noah spoke again, his voice was different, colder, more calculating. You have no idea what you're doing, Emily. I have resources you can't imagine. Connections. I can make your life very difficult. More difficult than being married to you? Emily surprised herself with the steel in her voice. I don't think that's possible. We'll see about that. The line went dead. Sarah was already dialing. I'm calling the police. That was definitely a threat. As they waited for the officers to arrive, Emily felt something shift inside her chest. The fear was still there, but it was overshadowed by something else. A fierce protective instinct that had nothing to do with self-preservation and everything to do with her son. Noah had made one crucial mistake in his elaborate plan to destroy her. He'd underestimated how strong a mother's love could make her. Mary returned from her phone calls with a satisfied expression. Danny's coming up from Coral Springs with 2 of his deputies. They'll escort us back to the house and stay until this is resolved. What if Noah tries something before then? Emily asked. Then he'll learn that the Parker women don't go down without a fight, Mary said grimly. My daddy taught me to shoot when I was 12, and I haven't forgotten how. Sarah looked startled. Mrs. Parker, I can't recommend. Don't worry, counselor. I won't shoot him unless he gives me cause. Mary's smile was sweet as sugar and twice as dangerous. But it never hurts to be prepared. As police sirens wailed in the distance, Emily looked at the evidence of her husband's betrayal spread across the desk. Tomorrow, she would walk into court not as a victim, but as a woman with the power to seek justice. Noah wanted a war. He was about to get one. The Miami-Dade County Courthouse buzzed with its usual Monday morning chaos. Lawyers in expensive suits, anxious clients clutching folders, reporters hunting for stories. Emily sat on a bench outside courtroom 4B, watching the parade of human drama unfold around her. She wore her best navy dress and the pearl earrings Mary had given her for her wedding, armor for a battle she never wanted to fight. Remember, Sarah said, reviewing her notes one final time. Today is just a preliminary hearing. Judge Morrison will review the evidence and decide whether to grant emergency custody to Noah or maintain the status quo. What are our chances? Emily asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer. With the evidence we have? Excellent. But family court can be unpredictable. Sarah glanced toward the courtroom doors. Noah's lawyer is good, and desperate men do desperate things. As if summoned by her words, Marcus Webb appeared at the end of the hallway. He was exactly what Emily had expected. Silver-haired, perfectly tailored suit, the kind of confidence that came from winning cases for powerful men. Behind him walked Noah, looking haggard despite his expensive clothes. Emily's breath caught when she saw her husband. He'd lost weight, and there were dark circles under his eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide. For a moment, she felt an echo of the old sympathy, the urge to comfort him that had defined their marriage. Then she remembered Lucas still in the NICU, still fighting for every breath while his father plotted to steal him away. The sympathy died. Noah's eyes found hers across the hallway, and he started walking toward her. Sarah immediately stood, positioning herself between them. "Mr. Parker," Sarah said coolly, "I don't think it's appropriate for you to approach my client." "I just want to talk to my wife," Noah said, his voice carrying that familiar wounded tone that used to make Emily apologize for things that weren't her fault. "Emily, please. We can work this out without destroying our family." "Our family?" Emily stood up, surprising herself with her steadiness. "You destroyed our family the moment you chose another woman over your pregnant wife." Noah's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something cold and calculating underneath. "You're making a mistake, Emily. A big one. Think about Lucas's future." "I am thinking about Lucas's future. That's why I'm here." Marcus Webb placed a hand on Noah's arm. "That's enough. We'll see you in court, Miss Chen." As they walked away, Emily felt Mary's hand squeeze her shoulder. "You did good, honey. Don't let him get in your head." The courtroom was smaller than Emily had expected, wood paneling that absorbed sound and made everything feel muffled. Judge Morrison was a woman in her 60s, with gray hair pulled back severely and eyes that missed nothing. She reviewed the case files while the lawyers made their opening statements. "Your Honor," Marcus Webb began, his voice smooth as aged whiskey, "my client is a successful businessman and devoted father who is being systematically alienated from his newborn son by a wife who has demonstrated increasingly erratic behavior." Emily watched the judge's face, looking for any sign of reaction. Judge Morrison remained impassive. "Mr. Parker was taking a much-needed mental health break when his son was born prematurely," Webb continued. "He returned immediately upon learning of the emergency and has been denied access to his child based solely on his wife's vindictive accusations." Sarah stood for her response. "Your Honor, the evidence will show that Mr. Parker wasn't taking a mental health break. He was on a romantic getaway with his mistress while his wife went into labor alone. Furthermore, we have documented evidence of financial fraud, illegal surveillance, and systematic emotional abuse." Judge Morrison looked up from her files. "Miss Chen, those are serious allegations. I assume you have evidence to support them?" "Extensive evidence, Your Honor." For the next hour, Sarah methodically presented their case. Bank records showing Noah's affair-related expenditures, screenshots of his illegal recordings, the forged loan documents, email threads detailing his plan to claim Emily was mentally unfit. With each piece of evidence, Emily watched Noah's confident facade crumble. His lawyer whispered frantically in his ear. But there was no defense for the black-and-white proof of his deception. The most damaging moment came when Sarah played one of Noah's recorded conversations with Emily from her 7th month of pregnancy. "I'm scared about the delivery," Emily's voice came through the courtroom speakers, vulnerable and trusting. "What if something goes wrong?" "You worry too much." Noah's voice responded through the courtroom speakers. "That's your problem. You're always catastrophizing. I just want everything to be perfect for our baby. Our baby will be fine. You're the one I'm worried about. All this anxiety isn't healthy." Sarah stopped the recording. "Your Honor, this conversation took place while Mr. Parker was already planning to use my client's normal pregnancy concerns as evidence of mental instability. He was manipulating her fears while secretly recording her most vulnerable moments." Judge Morrison's expression had grown increasingly stern as the evidence mounted. "Mr. Webb, does your client have a response to these allegations?" Marcus Webb stood, but his usual confidence had evaporated. "Your Honor, these recordings were taken out of context. My client was concerned about his wife's mental health and was documenting concerning behaviors out of love and worry." "By secretly recording her without consent?" Judge Morrison cut in. Webb's face flushed. We would need to examine the circumstances. The circumstances are clear, Judge Morrison interrupted sharply. Mr. Parker violated Florida's consent laws and planned to use illegally obtained recordings in a custody proceeding. That shows both criminal intent and a fundamental disregard for his wife's rights. Emily felt a surge of hope, but Sarah had warned her not to celebrate too early. Judge Morrison continued, Miss Chen, you've presented compelling evidence of financial misconduct and illegal surveillance. However, I need to address the immediate question of custody. What is your client's position regarding Mr. Parker's visitation rights? Sarah stood. My client is not seeking to deny Mr. Parker access to his son, Your Honor. She's requesting supervised visitation only, given the evidence of his unstable behavior and the threatening phone call he made to her last week. Threatening phone call? Judge Morrison asked. Sarah presented the police report from Emily's complaint, along with the audio recording she'd made of Noah's threats. His voice filled the courtroom, cold, menacing, completely different from his usual charm. Emily saw several people in the gallery shift uncomfortably. Judge Morrison listened to the entire recording, her expression growing darker with each word. Mr. Webb, she said when it finished, your client threatened his wife with unspecified retaliation if she didn't comply with his demands. How do you explain that? Marcus Webb looked like a man watching his career implode. Your Honor, my client was under tremendous stress. Stress doesn't excuse threats, Counselor. Judge Morrison shuffled her papers with sharp, decisive movements. I've heard enough. The courtroom fell silent, except for the scratch of the court reporter's fingers on her machine. Based on the evidence presented, Judge Morrison began, I find that Mr. Parker has demonstrated a pattern of deceptive, manipulative, and potentially dangerous behavior. His secret recordings of his wife were illegal. His financial misconduct was extensive. His threats were unacceptable. Emily felt her heart hammering against her ribs. Therefore, I am denying Mr. Parker's petition for emergency custody. Furthermore, I am granting Mrs. Parker's request for a temporary restraining order. Mr. Parker is to have no contact with Mrs. Parker except through attorneys. Any visitation with the minor child will be supervised by court-appointed personnel only. The gavel came down with a sound like thunder. Emily felt her knees go weak with relief. Mary's arm went around her shoulders, steadying her. Additionally, Judge Morrison continued, I am referring this case to the district attorney's office for potential criminal prosecution. The evidence of fraud and illegal surveillance warrants investigation. Noah stood abruptly, his face flushed with rage. This is ridiculous. She's poisoning everyone against me. I'm a good father. Mr. Parker. Judge Morrison's voice could have frozen fire. I suggest you remain silent before you make your situation worse. And Mr. Webb, control your client. Marcus Webb was frantically trying to calm Noah down, but the damage was done. His outburst had only confirmed the judge's assessment of his character. As the courtroom cleared, Emily found herself standing in the hallway, barely able to process what had just happened. She'd won. Not just won. She'd destroyed Noah's case so completely that he was facing criminal charges. The walls that had trapped her for years seemed to crumble all at once, replaced by something raw and open, freedom she could taste but didn't yet know how to live in. How do you feel? Sarah asked, packing up her files. Emily thought about it. Empty, she said finally. I thought I'd feel triumphant, but I just feel empty. The victory was real, but so was the grief for the love she'd once believed in, now buried under the weight of betrayal. That's normal, Mary said gently. Grief doesn't end just because justice is served. You're mourning the man you thought you married. Through the courthouse windows, Emily could see reporters gathering on the steps. The story had grown beyond local news. Several national outlets were now covering what they dubbed the Yachtgate scandal. What happens now? Emily asked. Now we go see Lucas, Sarah said. The hospital called while we were in court. He's ready to be discharged. Emily felt tears prick her eyes. After 2 weeks in the NICU, her son was finally coming home, to a home without his father. But maybe that was exactly what they both needed. She squeezed Mary's hand, grounding herself in that tiny, fragile truth. Freedom might feel empty at first, but it was hers to fill. As they walked toward the courthouse exit, Emily's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Congratulations, you won this battle. But the war isn't over. I know things about you that Sarah Chen never found. Sleep well, knowing I'm out there." And Emily showed the message to Sarah, who immediately called the police. But as they waited for officers to arrive, Emily realized something had changed inside her. 3 weeks ago, a message like that would have sent her into a panic. Now it just made her angry. Noah could threaten her all he wanted. He could lurk in the shadows and plot his revenge. It didn't matter anymore. She had her son. She had her freedom. She had proof of her own strength. And she was done being afraid. 3 weeks later, Emily stood in the nursery she'd once imagined decorating with Noah, watching Lucas sleep peacefully in his crib. At 6 weeks old, he'd finally shed the last of his preemie fragility. His breathing was strong and steady, his cheeks had filled out, and when he looked at her, Emily could swear she saw recognition in his deep blue eyes. The house felt different now, lighter somehow. Despite everything that had happened within its walls, Mary had helped her redecorate, removing every trace of Noah's presence and making space for the life Emily was building alone. The master bedroom had become her writing sanctuary where she'd begun documenting her story. The kitchen table was covered with legal documents, medical bills, and laptop cables, the unglamorous infrastructure of starting over. Emily's phone chimed with a notification from her bank app, another deposit from her blog sponsors. What had started as random posts about single motherhood and surviving betrayal had grown into something she'd never expected, a platform that reached thousands of women dealing with similar pain. The Diary of a Discarded Wife now had 50,000 subscribers and counting. Brands were reaching out for partnerships. A literary agent had called about a book deal. Emily was earning more from her writing than she'd ever made as a teacher. The irony wasn't lost on her. Noah's betrayal had destroyed the life she thought she wanted, but it had given her the life she actually needed. A soft knock on the front door made her pause. Through the peephole, she saw a delivery driver holding a small package. No return address, which had become common since her story went viral. Supporters sent everything from baby clothes to homemade cookies. But when she opened the package, her blood ran cold. Inside was a flash drive and a handwritten note in Noah's familiar script. "Emily, I told you this wasn't over. Check the drive, then call me. You have 24 hours before I release everything. Think about Lucas's future." And with trembling fingers, Emily inserted the flash drive into her laptop. The screen filled with folder after folder of files, videos, and documents. Her heart stopped when she saw the titles. Emily Postpartum Depression Evidence, Lucas Medical Vulnerabilities, Financial Desperation, Hospital Bills, Blog, Exploitation of Private Marriage. She clicked on the first video file. The screen showed her own face, gaunt and exhausted from 2 weeks ago. She was sitting in this very nursery talking to someone off camera. It took her a moment to realize she was watching herself during a therapy session she'd conducted via video call. He had somehow hacked her computer camera. In the video, she was discussing her struggles with postpartum anxiety, her fears about raising Lucas alone, her moments of doubt about whether she was a good mother, all of it taken completely out of context, edited to make her sound unstable and unfit. Emily's hands shook as she scrolled through more files. Bank statements showing her medical debt, screenshots of her blog posts where she'd written about her darkest moments, even photos of Lucas's medical charts from the NICU. Her phone rang. Noah's number. "Did you enjoy the preview?" His voice was different now. Not the smooth charm she'd fallen for, or even the cold calculation she'd learned to fear. This was something new, something desperate and dangerous. "How did you get this?" Emily whispered. "I'm very good with technology, Emily. Always have been." "You think changing your passwords was enough? I've been watching you for weeks. Every therapy session, every video call with Sarah, every moment you thought you were alone." Emily felt sick. "You're insane." "I'm thorough," Noah snapped, "and I'm done playing by your rules. You destroyed my business, my reputation, my relationship with my son. Did you really think there wouldn't be consequences?" The judge said, "The judge doesn't understand what you're really like, but she will, unless you call Sarah Chen right now and agree to my original settlement offer." Emily's mind raced. What settlement offer? Joint custody. You drop all criminal charges. Sign a non-disclosure agreement. In exchange, these files stay private. And if I don't? Then tomorrow morning, every news outlet, every parenting blog, every social media platform gets a very different version of your story. The unstable mother who exploited her own tragedy for fame and money, who puts her baby at risk for clicks, who fakes postpartum depression for sympathy. Emily felt the familiar panic rising in her chest, the same feeling that had controlled her for years whenever Noah threatened to withdraw his approval. But this time, something else rose alongside it. Rage. "You filmed me without my consent," she said quietly. "Again. Try to prove it. The files will look like they came from your own security system, which technically they did. My security system, the one I installed when we moved in, the one that's been uploading to a cloud server I control. Did you really think I'd give up access to my own house?" Emily closed her eyes, trying to think through the implications. Noah had been watching her for weeks, collecting ammunition, waiting for the right moment to strike. But there was something in his voice, a desperate edge that hadn't been there before. "Where are you calling from, Noah?" Silence. "Because I know it's not your apartment. Sarah told me you were evicted last week, and your office lease was terminated. So where are you?" "That's not your concern. Are you in your car? A motel?" Emily pressed. "Because according to the news reports, your credit cards were frozen pending the fraud investigation." She felt strength returning to her voice. "You're broke, aren't you? Completely broke." Another pause. "I have resources." "No, you don't. That's why you're doing this. Not because you want Lucas back, but because you need money. The NDA isn't about protecting your reputation. It's about protecting you from criminal prosecution so you can flee the country. You don't know what you're talking about." But Emily could hear it now. The hollow echo that suggested Noah was calling from somewhere empty. Maybe his car. Maybe an abandoned office. The man who'd once commanded boardrooms was reduced to making threats from whatever shelter he could find. "I know exactly what I'm talking about," Emily said, surprising herself with her calm. "And I know something else. You made a mistake." "What mistake?" "You're still thinking like the old Emily. The one who was scared of you, who believed your threats, who would do anything to avoid conflict." Emily walked to the window, looking out at the quiet suburban street where Lucas would grow up safe and free. But that Emily doesn't exist anymore. "Emily, be smart about this." "I am being smart. I'm thinking about Lucas's future, just like you said. And his future doesn't include a father who stalks his mother and threatens her with illegal surveillance footage." Emily hung up and immediately called Sarah. "He's contacted you?" Sarah's voice was sharp with concern. "He has surveillance footage from inside my house, therapy sessions, private moments with Lucas, everything. He's threatening to release it unless I agree to joint custody and drop the criminal charges." "That bastard. But Emily, this might actually work in our favor." "How?" "Because he just committed another felony. Stalking, illegal surveillance, extortion, and he documented it himself by sending you the evidence." Sarah's voice grew excited. "Can you forward me everything he sent? What about the threat to release the footage?" "Let him try. Any media outlet that published illegally obtained surveillance footage would face massive liability. And the footage itself proves his criminal behavior, not yours." Emily felt something click into place. So if he releases it, he destroys himself completely while proving he's been stalking me. Exactly. It's the stupidest possible move he could make. 20 minutes later, Detective Ray Coleman was sitting in Emily's living room, reviewing the evidence while Mary made coffee with grim satisfaction. "This is a prosecutor's dream," Coleman said, echoing Sarah's earlier words. "Especially since he sent it to you directly. We can trace the IP address, document the timestamps. It's airtight." "What happens now?" Emily asked. "Now we set a trap. You're going to call him back and agree to meet." Emily's stomach lurched. "What?" "Not alone," Coleman clarified quickly. "We'll be watching. The moment he shows up, we arrest him for stalking, extortion, and violation of the restraining order." An hour later, Emily sat in the parking lot of Bayfront Park, her phone in her lap, surrounded by unmarked police cars she couldn't see but knew were there. Noah had insisted on meeting in public, probably thinking it would make him safer. He was wrong. She saw him before he saw her. A figure walking across the grass with the hunched shoulders of a man who'd lost everything. Up close, the change was shocking. Noah looked like he'd aged 10 years in 3 weeks. Unkempt, he slid into the passenger seat of her car, and Emily caught the smell of alcohol and desperation. "You came," he said, and for a moment his voice held an echo of the man she'd once loved. "I want this to end," Emily said truthfully. "It can end. Just sign the papers." He pulled out a folder. "Joint custody, shared expenses, sealed records. We can co-parent like civilized people." Emily looked at the man who'd once convinced her she was lucky to have him, who'd made her doubt her own perceptions, her own worth, her own strength, who'd systematically planned to destroy her while she carried his child. "No," she said simply. Noah's expression shifted, cycling through confusion, anger, and finally something like panic. "Emily, you don't understand what you're risking. I have nothing left to lose." "I know. That's what makes you dangerous." Emily met his eyes steadily. "But I'm not afraid of you anymore." "You should be." "Why? Because you'll release surveillance footage that proves you're a criminal? Because you'll threaten me with evidence of your own crimes?" Emily shook her head. "You've been lying for so long, you've forgotten what truth looks like." Noah reached into his jacket, and for a moment Emily's heart stopped, but instead of a weapon, he pulled out a phone. "One call," he said desperately. "One call and every news outlet in the country gets these files." "Go ahead." Emily's calm seemed to break something in him. His mask finally slipped completely, revealing the frightened, desperate man underneath. "You destroyed everything," he screamed. "My business, my reputation, my future. I gave you everything. You gave me lies. I loved you." Emily looked at him, really looked at him, and felt nothing but pity. "No, Noah, you never loved me. You loved controlling me. There's a difference." Detective Coleman's voice came through her earpiece. "We're moving in." Car doors slammed around them as plainclothes officers closed in. Noah looked around wildly, finally understanding that he'd walked into a trap. "You set me up," he said, his voice hollow. "You set yourself up," Emily replied, "the moment you decided to threaten me." As they handcuffed Noah and read him his rights, Emily watched through the windshield. She felt no triumph, no satisfaction, just a profound sense of closure. Her phone buzzed with a text from Mary. "Lucas is awake and asking for Mama. Come home when you're ready." Home. Not the house she'd shared with Noah, but the life she was building with her son. A life free from manipulation, threats, and fear. Emily started her car and drove toward that life, leaving Noah and all his empty threats behind her. The war was finally over, and she had won. 6 months later, Emily stood at the podium of the Florida Women's Conference, looking out at an audience of 800 women who had come to hear her speak. 6 months ago, she could barely order coffee without second-guessing herself. Now she was addressing corporate executives, nonprofit leaders, and survivors like herself about the power of reclaiming your own narrative. "The hardest part wasn't the betrayal," she said into the microphone, her voice steady and clear. "The hardest part was learning to trust my own voice again." In the front row, Mary beamed with pride, bouncing a babbling Lucas on her knee. At 7 months old, he was thriving, hitting every milestone, charming everyone he met, completely unaware that his existence had sparked a revolution in his mother's life. "I spent years believing that love meant making myself smaller," Emily continued. "That being a good wife meant accepting less than I deserved. That my intuition was just paranoia. That my needs were just selfishness." The audience was silent, hanging on every word. Emily had learned to read crowds over the past few months, speaking at conferences, women's shelters, and support groups across Florida and beyond. She could always spot the women who were living her old life. The ones who flinched at loud voices, who checked their phones constantly, who apologized for taking up space. "But here's what I learned," she said, her voice ringing with conviction. "The woman who is too much for the wrong man is exactly enough for the right life." Applause rippled through the auditorium. Emily waited for it to settle before continuing. "My ex-husband is currently serving an 18-month sentence for stalking, extortion, and financial fraud. His construction company was liquidated to pay creditors and victims of his schemes. The woman he left me for has disappeared from social media entirely." The audience shifted, some uncomfortable with the bluntness of justice, others nodding in satisfaction. "But this story isn't about their downfall," Emily said firmly. It's about what rises from the ashes of a life you thought you wanted. Behind her, a screen displayed the cover of her newly published book, The Voids That Save Us, A Mother's Journey from Betrayal to Breakthrough. It had hit the New York Times bestseller list 3 weeks ago. I've been asked if I would change anything. Knowing what I know now, if I could go back and prevent the affair, stop the betrayal, save my marriage. Emily paused, looking directly at the cameras recording her speech. And my answer might surprise you. No, I wouldn't change a thing. A murmur ran through the crowd. Because that marriage wasn't saving me. It was slowly killing who I was meant to become. The betrayal wasn't my destruction, it was my liberation. After her speech, Emily worked the reception, shaking hands and signing books. A young woman approached her, maybe 25, with the hollow look Emily recognized too well. "Mrs. Parker?" The woman's voice was barely a whisper. My husband says I'm paranoid when I ask about his phone. He says I'm imagining things." Emily took the woman's hands gently. "What does your gut tell you?" "That something's wrong, but he makes me feel crazy for thinking it." "Then trust your gut. Always trust your gut." Emily squeezed her hands. "And remember, you don't need permission to protect yourself." The woman nodded, tears in her eyes, and Emily saw herself from 8 months ago. Scared, confused, but already fighting to survive. Later that evening, Emily sat in her new apartment, a bright 2-bedroom in Coconut Grove, with hardwood floors and windows that let in actual sunlight. Lucas was sleeping peacefully in his crib, the picture of health and contentment. Her laptop was open to her blog dashboard, showing metrics that still amazed her. 200,000 monthly readers, brand partnerships that paid more than her old teacher salary ever had, and a waiting list of speaking engagements that stretched into next year. Her phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Noah's parole hearing was denied. Earliest possible release is in 10 months. You can breathe easy. Emily deleted the message without responding. She'd stopped counting the days of Noah's sentence months ago. His presence in her life was now limited to court-ordered child support payments that arrived like clockwork. Ironic considering he'd once claimed to want custody to protect Lucas's financial future. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. Through the peephole, she saw a delivery driver with a large bouquet of flowers. No card was visible, but Emily's stomach clenched reflexively. Old habits from months of anonymous threats and messages. But when she opened the card, she smiled. The flowers were from her literary agent, congratulating her on signing a 2-book deal, a follow-up memoir, and a practical guide for women leaving toxic relationships. Her phone rang. The display showed Mom, something that still made her heart skip, even 6 months after her mother had reached out following the news coverage. "Emily, I saw your speech online. I'm so proud of you." The relationship with her parents was still fragile, still healing from years of strained distance, but they were trying. And Emily had learned that sometimes trying was enough. "Thanks, Mom. How's Dad?" He's still processing everything. You know how he is with emotions. But he bought 3 copies of your book to give to his coworkers." Emily laughed. That was as close to emotional support as her father knew how to give. And she was learning to accept love in the forms people could offer it. After the call, Emily opened her laptop and began writing her evening blog post, a ritual she'd maintained even as her platform grew beyond anything she'd imagined. "Today, I spoke to 800 women about reclaiming their voices. But tonight, I want to talk to the one woman reading this alone, wondering if she's strong enough to change her life. You are. I know because I was you. I was the woman who stayed quiet to keep the peace, who apologized for existing, who believed that love meant accepting whatever scraps of affection were thrown my way. But here's what no one tells you about rock bottom. It's the most solid foundation you'll ever build on. Your life is not a rough draft. Because that marriage wasn't saving me. It was slowly killing who I was meant to become. The betrayal wasn't my destruction, it was my liberation." After her speech, Emily worked the reception, shaking hands and signing copies of her book. The young woman approached her, maybe 25, with the hollow, guarded look Emily recognized all too well. "Mrs. Parker?" The woman's voice trembled. "My husband says I'm paranoid when I ask about his phone. He says I'm imagining things." Emily gently took her hands. "What does your gut tell you?" "That something's wrong?" but he makes me feel crazy for thinking it. Then trust your gut. Always trust your gut. Emily squeezed her hand softly but firmly. And remember, you don't need permission to protect yourself. That night, Emily would sleep peacefully, in the life she had built from the ashes of the one that nearly broke her. The broken woman who had once driven herself alone to the hospital, terrified and abandoned, was gone for good. In her place stood someone stronger, braver, and infinitely freer. Someone who had learned the greatest love story she would ever write was the one she was writing with herself. 1 year later, Emily stood in front of the bathroom mirror in her hotel suite, adjusting the emerald green dress she'd chosen for tonight's awards gala. The Florida Women's Foundation was honoring her with their Voice of Courage Award in recognition of her advocacy for survivors of domestic abuse and financial control. The woman staring back at her from the mirror was unrecognizable compared to the frightened, silenced wife she used to be. This woman had laugh lines around her eyes, certainty in her posture, and a calm power that only came from surviving your darkest moments and realizing they hadn't destroyed you after all. Lucas toddled into the bathroom, his wobbly 13-month-old steps bringing him straight to her side. He wrapped his tiny arms around her legs, beaming up at her with a grin that never failed to soften her entire world. "Mama, pretty," he declared in his sweet, new words. Emily lifted him up and caught both their reflections in the mirror. "We're both pretty amazing, aren't we, baby boy?" Behind them, Mary appeared in the doorway, graceful in a navy dress Emily had bought her for the occasion. At 70, Mary wasn't just a protector anymore. She was Emily's partner in running the foundation they'd built together for women starting over. "Ready to go change the world?" Mary teased in the same dry tone that had once carried Emily through nights she thought she wouldn't survive. "Ready to keep changing it," Emily said with a warm smile. As she grabbed her clutch, Emily's phone buzzed with a message from her publisher. "Your memoir just hit 20 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list." She slipped the phone into her bag, hugged Lucas close one last time, and walked out the door, into a future she'd earned one honest word, one fearless choice at a time. Because that marriage wasn't saving me. It was slowly killing who I was meant to become. The betrayal wasn't my destruction, it was my liberation. After her speech, Emily worked the reception, shaking hands and signing books. A young woman approached her, maybe 25, with the hollow look Emily recognized too well. "Mrs. Parker?" The woman's voice was barely a whisper. My husband says I'm paranoid when I ask about his phone. He says I'm imagining things." Emily took the woman's hands gently. "What does your gut tell you?" "That something's wrong, but he makes me feel crazy for thinking it." "Then trust your gut. Always trust your gut." Emily squeezed her hands. "And remember, you don't need permission to protect yourself." That night, she would sleep peacefully, in the life she'd built from the ashes of the one that had nearly destroyed her. The broken woman who had driven herself to the hospital alone was gone forever. In her place stood someone stronger, braver, and infinitely more free. Someone who had learned that the greatest love story of her life was the one she was writing with herself. 1 year later, Emily stood in front of the bathroom mirror in her hotel suite, adjusting the emerald green dress she'd chosen for tonight's award ceremony. The Florida Women's Foundation was honoring her with their Voice of Courage Award, recognition for her advocacy work with survivors of domestic abuse and financial manipulation. The woman looking back at her from the mirror was a stranger to the frightened, pregnant wife who had once lived in this reflection. This woman had laugh lines around her eyes, confidence in her posture, and a strength that came from surviving her worst fears and discovering they hadn't destroyed her. Lucas toddled into the bathroom, his chubby legs carrying him with the determined waddle of a 13-month-old on a mission. He wrapped his arms around Emily's legs, looking up at her with that radiant smile that never failed to melt her heart. "Mama, pretty," he declared in his sweet, babbling voice that was just beginning to form real words. Emily lifted him into her arms, meeting both their gazes in the mirror. "We're both pretty amazing, aren't we, baby boy?" Behind them, Mary appeared in the doorway, resplendent in the navy dress Emily had bought her for the occasion. At 70, Mary had become more than a caretaker. She was Emily's business partner, helping manage the foundation they'd started together for women leaving abusive relationships. "Ready to go change the world?" Mary asked, her dry humor exactly the same tone that had carried them through the darkest days. "Ready to keep changing it," Emily corrected with a smile. As they prepared to leave for the ceremony, Emily's phone chimed with a notification from her publisher, a simple line that still made her heart skip a beat. "Your memoir has spent 20 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list." Emily tucked her phone away, hugged Lucas a little tighter, and walked toward the door, toward the life she had fought to claim and the future she was still writing, one brave choice at a time. The Voids That Save Us had just hit 1 million copies sold worldwide. The number still felt surreal, but the messages from readers never did. Women writing to thank her for giving them permission to trust their instincts, to leave, to rebuild, to believe they deserved better. The award ceremony was held in the grand ballroom of the Biltmore Hotel, filled with influential women from across Florida. As Emily walked to the podium to accept her award, she thought about all the other women who should be standing here. The ones still trapped in relationships that shrank them. The ones who had escaped but hadn't yet found their voices. The ones who had tried to leave but hadn't survived the attempt. "This award belongs to every woman who has ever felt too small for her own life," Emily began, her voice clear and unwavering through the glittering ballroom. "To every woman who has been told she's too much, too sensitive, too demanding, for wanting basic respect and love." She paused, letting her gaze find the familiar faces in the crowd. Sarah Chen, now a friend as much as an attorney, Dr. Martinez, who had delivered Lucas and testified at Noah's trial, dozens of women from her support groups who had become fierce advocates themselves. "A year and a half ago, I was abandoned in labor by a man who spent months planning to steal my child and ruin my credibility. Tonight, that same man is in prison, and I am standing here holding an award for courage." Emily smiled, feeling the solid weight of the crystal trophy in her hands. "The universe has a sense of humor, doesn't it?" Gentle laughter rippled through the audience. "But this story isn't about his fall, it's about our rise. Because every woman who finds the strength to leave, to speak up, to rebuild, to believe she is worthy, she is changing the world, one brave choice at a time." As applause filled the ballroom, Emily looked out at the sea of faces and saw herself reflected back. Women who had learned that survival was only the beginning, that healing was possible, that the life on the other side of fear was more beautiful than they had ever dared to imagine. After the ceremony, Emily stood on the hotel balcony overlooking Biscayne Boulevard. Lucas slept peacefully in her arms despite the distant hum of the celebration still going on inside. The Miami skyline stretched before them, lights glittering like promises in the warm night. Her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "Mrs. Parker, I saw your speech online. My husband has been controlling our finances and monitoring my calls for 3 years. Tonight, I opened my own bank account. Thank you for showing me I can save myself." Emily smiled, typing back. "You already have saved yourself. The account was just the first step. Trust your strength. It's bigger than you know." These messages arrived daily now, women at every stage of recognizing, leaving, and rebuilding their lives. And as Emily watched the city lights dance across Lucas's sleeping face, she knew one thing for certain. She would spend the rest of her days reminding every woman who needed to hear it that freedom was possible and worth fighting for. And she answered each one personally, remembering how alone she had felt in those dark moments before she found her own voice. Mary joined her on the balcony, carrying 2 glasses of champagne. "Proud of you, kiddo." "Proud of us," Emily corrected, clinking their glasses together. "None of this would have happened without you. You would have found your way. You were always stronger than you knew. You just needed permission to see it." As they stood together in comfortable silence, Emily reflected on the strange mathematics of survival, how one moment of devastating betrayal could multiply into thousands of moments of purpose. How the worst thing that had ever happened to her had somehow led her straight to the best version of herself. She thought about Noah occasionally, though less and less as the months passed. He would be eligible for parole in 4 months. But Emily felt no anxiety about his release. The restraining orders were permanent. His access to Lucas forever limited to supervised visits he had never once requested. His world had shrunk to the size of a prison cell, while hers had expanded beyond anything she had ever dared to imagine. Bryony had vanished from the public eye entirely after testifying at his trial. Emily hoped she was somewhere learning to trust her own judgment, building a life based on something deeper than social media metrics and men's approval. "Time to go home," Mary said eventually, as Lucas stirred softly in Emily's arms. Home. The word still filled Emily with warmth. Not the house she'd once shared with Noah, but the bright apartment where she had learned to trust silence instead of fear it. Where Lucas's giggles bounced off walls that had never absorbed shouting or threats or the sound of her own stifled sobs. As they drove through the quiet Miami streets, Emily's mind drifted to tomorrow's plans. A morning interview with a national news program about her foundation's growing impact. Lunch with her literary agent to discuss the children's book she was writing about brave mothers and safe homes. An afternoon therapy session where she would keep peeling back the final layers of old wounds that still surprised her sometimes. Recovery, she'd learned, wasn't a finish line. It was a daily choice to pick herself again and again. Back home, she tucked Lucas into his crib, marveling as always at the peace on his sleeping face. He would grow up in a home where love wasn't conditional, where feelings weren't weapons, where the loudest voices were the ones lifting each other up. Emily changed into her pajamas and settled at her laptop to write her nightly blog post, a ritual that felt as essential as breathing. Tonight, I accepted an award for courage. But I want to talk about a different kind of bravery. The kind that happens in bathroom mirrors at 3 a.m. when you look at yourself and decide you matter. The kind that opens a secret bank account, saves emergency money, and quietly plans a future the people trying to control you can't see. The kind that trusts your instincts even when everyone around you says you're wrong. That's not just courage. That's revolution. Every woman who chooses herself is changing the world. Every woman who refuses to shrink is making space for others to grow. Every woman who speaks her truth is giving someone else permission to find theirs. You don't have to wait for permission to save yourself. You don't need anyone's approval to know your worth. You don't have to earn the right to be treated with respect. You just have to decide you're worth saving, and then save yourself. The world is waiting for who you become when you stop apologizing for taking up space in it. Emily hit publish and closed her laptop. Through her window, she could see the lights of other apartments, other lives unfolding quietly behind glass. Some of those women were probably reading her words right now, feeling a little less alone than they did an hour ago. The thought filled her with a calm, certain purpose that made every painful step of her journey feel worth it. As she got ready for bed, Emily caught her reflection in the bathroom mirror one last time. The woman looking back at her was everything the frightened, pregnant wife could never have imagined becoming. Financially independent, emotionally grounded, unafraid of her own voice. But more than anything else, she was free. Free from the exhausting work of making herself smaller to keep someone else comfortable. Free from the tightrope of walking on eggshells around someone's fragile ego. Free from the lie that love was supposed to hurt, that sacrifice meant slicing pieces off yourself until there was nothing left. "Thank you," she whispered to her reflection. To the woman who had found strength in her darkest moment, who had refused to break when breaking would have been easier, who had chosen to see betrayal as liberation, not destruction. Then she turned off the light and went to sleep in the life she had built with her own 2 hands, one brave choice at a time. In the morning, she would wake up and choose herself all over again. So the story is over, my wonderful friends. And if you're still here with me at this hour, reading these final lines, then maybe something in Emily's journey has reached inside you too. Maybe it reminds you of a time you felt small in your own life, or trusted the wrong person, or believed you had to shrink just to keep the peace. Tonight, I want you to take this story and let it remind you of one simple truth. Your worth does not depend on someone else's ability to see it. People will fail you, lie to you, betray you, But none of that can erase who you are underneath it all. As author Haruki Murakami once wrote, "And once the storm is over, you won't remember how you made it through. But one thing is certain. When you come out of the storm, you won't be the same person who walked in." That's what Emily learned. That betrayal didn't ruin her. It revealed her. It forced her to build a life sturdier than any lie could destroy. And you? You have that same power. Right now. Even if you feel like you're drowning in heartbreak or fear, you have permission to rewrite your story, just like she did. So tonight, if you feel alone, remember you're not. Thousands of us are right here with you, growing, healing, rising. If this story touched you, please do me one small favor. Leave a like, share it with someone who needs courage tonight, and subscribe so you don't miss the next story that might help you take your next brave step. You deserve a love that shows up, not excuses. You deserve a life that feels like freedom, not fear. And above all, you deserve to believe this. You are never too much. You are always enough. Thank you for being here. Until next time, take care and keep choosing you.